Lock the gates. Lock the gates. Are we doing this? We're doing this. Today's guest is Mara Wilson. We talk about Matilda and we talk about the genocide. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's so serious sounding. When I told people that I wanted to make a talk show where Jewish people could speak freely about not supporting Israel, I had people be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay, fair. It's just that like most Jewish people I know feel this way, and I don't see it represented in the media at all. And I think it makes anti-Semitism worse when like people in the country or around the world, they've never met a Jewish person and they think every Jewish person supports what the Israeli military is doing. And the fact of the matter is, most Jewish people don't. A lot of boomers do, but a lot of young people do not. There's a cultural divide there and nobody talks about it. We also talk about evangelical Christians in this episode. Because they're really the ones that are, you know, making this genocide happen. It's the Israeli military, but it's Christian Zionists who are funding it and making it politically possible for them to do it. So it's kind of funny. You'll see in their interview, it comes up. I'm sort of like, I know you feel this way. I don't know if you want to talk about it publicly. And she's like, oh, I have to get this out about the evangelical Christians. Years ago, I worked at this comedy news website where we would make political videos, and you know, it's like adding sugar to your medicine. It just makes it a lot easier for people to understand things that might be kind of like a huge bummer in the news. I've always been really inspired by the Colbert Report. I watched that when I was in high school and college, and you know, he would talk about really intense, dark, depressing stuff, but would make it so funny that you would want to watch, and you would, you know, learn about civics and learn how politics works. I got to make videos about Obama's drone warfare. I got to hit Martin Shkreli in the head with the microphone. So with this channel, I want to be able to do what we did there, like talk about politics and injustice, but make it palatable, because who the hell wants to watch like a serious video about injustice happening? Some people do, but for some people it's like, oh, my life is heavy enough. Do I really need to? Like, I see Hannah Einbinder and Alana Glazer, they go on these really serious interview shows and they spill their hearts out and they talk about having Zionist relatives or friends, you know, trying to get Jewish boomers to give a shit. And I think they're so amazing for doing that. But it's not funny. It's not funny. It's not supposed to be funny. But I think when stuff is funny and digestible, it can reach more people. And of course, I understand the irony that this channel, not a lot of people watch it. Here's actually what I would want. I really think Weekend Update or The Tonight Show should do a bit where it's like a Jewish millennial or Gen Z person and a Jewish boomer arguing about their respective stances on Israel. Boomers think Gen Z gets all their news from TikTok. Millennials think boomers get all their news from Facebook videos that are obviously AI. You know, like jokes like that. I honestly think you could make that funny enough and joke-packed enough that it would work for TV, and even people who are super pro-Israel might not love it, but they'd be okay with that being on TV. You know what I mean? I don't think that's crazy radical. I think that would work on TV. I think it wouldn't freak people out. But alas, I can't make those shows do that bit. So all I can do is just focus on my own stuff and try to make the show that I would want to see. I'm just grinding. I'm doing these interviews. I'm doing so much video editing. And I got these texts from my friend this past week. I think the Chris Smalls interview unlocked something with media people. They're getting what you're trying to do now. Thank God. I mean, like I said, when I said I wanted to do this show, people were like, what the are you talking about? But I just need to, like, show what I mean. And I think they'll get it. And hopefully lead by example. Like, that's really, like, my goal, is that people will see these videos and be like, oh, they're talking so openly about, like, Zionism. Like things that people think you can't touch on TV or mainstream places. I think if people just keep normalizing it, keep normalizing the conversation, it will get more socially acceptable to talk about this stuff. Today's episode is with the amazing Mara Wilson. So this marks the third guest who is a Jewish pacifist, the first being Sophie Strauss, the second being Mike Kaplan. On the episode with Sophie, she said something that was so insightful. She said that, yes, Jewish people are experts on what is and isn't anti-Semitism, but they're not experts on Palestine. Palestinians are experts on Palestine. So the other week, I interviewed Lana Salah. She's a very hilarious Palestinian-American comedian. So I'm really excited to get her perspective out there. And I have some more interviews coming up with other Muslim comics. So, yeah, I'm excited. Anyways, I'm glad that some media people are getting it. And with no further ado, here is my interview with actor, writer, audiobook narrator, and activist Mara Wilson.
So do we talk to the cameras at all or just talk to each other?
Both. I like to ham it up sometimes and look at the guests sometimes. Yeah. So yeah, if you ham it up, we could have fun editing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello. Welcome to the Mary Houlihan Show. Today we are joined by esteemed actor, writer, audiobooker, woman about town, Mara Wilson.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Mary. I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Likewise. I've been a fan of you since you were a little girl.
That's probably true.
It's so crazy that when you were a little kid, you got to work with these huge stars.
Yeah.
Danny DeVito, Martin Short, Santa Claus. You're lucky that you were young because you didn't know to be nervous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew Robin Williams was the genie in Aladdin, but I didn't really know. And I remember like watching Mork and Mindy when I was homesick from preschool because they'd have it on like, in like syndication on during the day. But I didn't really put that together. But I also think that growing up like in LA and like the Valley, you also kind of, I mean, I didn't grow up in like Beverly Hills or like West Hollywood or like neighborhoods where like actually famous people live, but
yes.
like
you lived in Burbank.
I lived
right?
in Burbank,
yes.
yeah. But my
so
dad,
normie. It was normie.
It was normie, but it was also like my mom had two best friends, and like one of them like the parents worked for Disney, and like at the other one I think the dad did like he worked for NBC or something. Like it was all just kind of like, oh yeah, that's what parents do.
Yes. I grew up in northern New Jersey, and I often think that experience is similar to like being an LA suburb kid.
Oh yeah.
Because like, I remember like one of my neighbors, her mom worked at like Discovery Networks.
Yeah.
And we'd go over their house and they'd have posters of like Shark Week and like, weird Discovery merch that she got.
Also a lot of diners,
Sure,
hanging out at diners is a big Burbank thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that like probably a lot of people from like Long Island and New Jersey moved out to Burbank and, kind of made it what it was.
Yes.
And yeah, Burbank is an interesting place. It's changed a lot over the years, but it's still kind of its own thing. And it's both like part of LA, but not, but also part of the Valley, but not.
Sure.
And it used to be like a way more conservative place because that's actually where they did a lot of like Air Force stuff during World War II.
Interesting.
So like if you were a kid growing up there, if you were me growing up there, like you would become friends with like World War II veterans.
Okay.
Just like as a kid. Yeah. Like some of my like best friends as a kid were like this 90 something couple across the street that, you know, were veterans basically, like, and had like worked for the war effort. And
Good for them.
yeah, like, and it was like, yeah, you guys like fought the Nazis or whatever, and now you're like, you know, growing things in a lemon tree and just, you know, growing lemons and
running
hanging out in the yard.
a HVAC business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's the kind of place that Burbank is, where there's still places where you get like tiny HVAC businesses, or they'll see like model train stores. There's like model train stores that are still running, and every now and then you'll walk by a shop and it'll be like VCR repair. And you'll be like, how?
Sure. I guess that makes sense for LA.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is that we had this sort of like quaintness about it, but we also had this like, you know, people working in editing, or people working in, you know, people don't think of, when they think of the industry, they think of either like actors and writers, or they think of like these powerful producers and money makers. They don't think of the people whose job it is to like transcribe stuff for closed captioning.
Right, exactly.
Or like guys like my dad, who like worked at a TV station and did like maintenance engineering.
Yeah.
So if equipment broke down, my dad would fix it.
That's the cool stuff about showbiz. Like when you're on a film set and you see just like a bunch of people who are in unions, just like loading stuff, lighting stuff, feeding people. I love film sets because they feel like little communist utopias.
You know, it's funny because when I was a kid, I think like after a while I got kind of tired of like being told where to go and what to do on a film set. And I was like, this isn't fun anymore. But now I do miss it because they are like little, you know, there's all these different unions working together, and there's all these people who are like, you know, it's this interesting sort of working class world.
Yeah.
You know?
And like obviously there's so many stories of like divas or whatever, but 99% of the time, at least the sets I've been on, people are like so respectful and like, you know, hey, we have to be on time and you better not waste time. You better hustle. Yeah.
It's really like, it really is. You're not going to get far if you're a diva, unless you're like a super like bankable star or writer or whatever.
Yes, or blackmailing everybody.
Yeah. like, but that stuff isn't going to get you very far. Like you need to be kind, you need to be patient, you need to be respectful of everybody there and everybody's time. And I do miss it now. When people are always like, oh, I bet it was so hard for you in Hollywood. And I'm like, well, actually, being on sets was like a really nice place to be. Yeah. It was kind of like if you're going to school every day, I'd say that being on a set was kind of like if you go to school every day, but you like your school. You know?
Yes.
You like going to school?
Yes.
Like, you know, there's things that are annoying about it. There's things that are frustrating about it. It's hard work. But like generally you're like, yeah, this is a pretty good place to go. And that's how I felt on sets. I didn't feel endangered there ever.
That's
really.
good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I guess it doesn't make for like a cool tabloid story.
It doesn't.
Like,
I mean, like,
this girl was treated extremely normal.
Yeah. I was, you know, there was definitely some stuff where I'm like, okay, you asked me to work overtime when I was like, you know, how old?
Needed a nap for sure. Yes.
Like there were times that, you know, it was weird, but for me it was generally a good experience there. The thing that was hard was being in the public eye. And I'm and so I tell people, I'm like, people are like, oh, Hollywood treats people so badly. Hollywood treats people so badly. And I'm like, look, personally speaking, for me, it kind of felt like Hollywood pushed me into the pool. But the stuff that made me neurotic, you know, it was the public and the media that held my head underwater. You know, that's what I say. Like, you know, Hollywood jokingly pushes you into the pool, but the other ones are the ones who hold you underwater, because that's where the pressure comes from, and the perfectionism and the stress. I think that was my experience. I know other people have had other experiences where, you know, terrible things happen to them in Hollywood, but that was what it was for me. For me, it was harder to, you know, to realize, oh my gosh, the eyes of the world are on me. And I didn't think about that when I was a kid, but as I got older, I realized it more and more. And, you know, it's hard to grow in that kind of environment, I think.
For sure. I wonder if you get this a lot. When I was a kid, I loved Matilda. It was so huge for me. And in particular, because I was small. I was the youngest of four. Parents, stressed out parents, siblings beating up on me. Oh, I wished I could just use my mind to beat up all of these people.
Yeah. I mean, it is, she is the underdog.
Yeah.
And she is, and she is somebody who uses her powers. And I mean, I think there's also something in there where her powers comes from educating herself. And, there is something kind of allegorical there. But she's also supported by a community that she finds,
Yeah.
Lavender pulls a prank on, Miss Trunchbull, and Miss Honey, is afraid but helps her anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so lots of loud motorcycles outside. Yeah. But yeah, Miss Honey helps her anyway. And so it is about, learning and educating yourself and helping yourself and standing up for what's right. But it's also about like finding a community that does that as well, and whose values are in line with you, that can take care of you, and how
That's
unfortunately
true.
that's not always your family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, but not always.
Yeah. So eventually she doesn't need to use her powers. I badly wanted to pick up things with my mind. And
Yeah. I hear that all the time, and people will say to me, "Did you ever try to do that?" And I'm like, "No, because I saw how it was done."
that must have been really cool.
Yeah, and there were things. It was funny though,
They
because
did like wires.
Yeah,
or
it was. I mean,
did
it
they
was,
have to do any green screen hands?
Yeah, there was
that's
definitely
so
green
cool.
screens. I remember like one of the scenes where we're watching Jackie Amanda Thripp being thrown. We were looking at these giant wooden poles, like these giant wooden sticks with pieces of tape on the end, and I remember us all just going like, because that's
so cool.
Yeah, but kids use their imaginations really well.
Yeah.
So if somebody says like, "Hey, look at this," and pretend it's this, or, "Hey, look at this." And, I know actors are very touchy about the word pretend, but,
Sure.
"Hey, look at this," and
It's
imagine
pretending.
it's a meditative kind of make believe.
Yes.
It's a meditative kind of make believe. It's deeper than pretending, but but I do think there is an element of pretending in it. I think it was easier for me to act when I was a kid,
Oh, for sure.
because when you're a kid, you're not afraid of being vulnerable.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you're not told yet. You have to manage your emotions. You have to care about what other people think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're not neurotic.
Yeah.
Or as neurotic as an adult. You're not thinking about my brand and what's next.
Exactly.
And,
Like kids are kind of shameless.
yeah.
So it was easier for me. And I remember as I got older, I felt like I couldn't connect with it the same way. I fell away
Sure.
from it. I feel like there's so many like middle grade and like YA fantasy books about like kids growing older and not being able to go back to like, Neverland or
Sure,
Narnia,
yes.
or like in His Dark Materials, Lyra can't read, The Golden Compass anymore, and things like that. I remember thinking like, oh, I get where they're coming
Yes,
from
yeah.
with that. And in some of these books, it's a sad thing, and in some of these books, it's a good thing.
Right.
But and it is both sad and good. I
Yeah.
think.
So you were a child actor turned adult writer.
Yeah.
Not an erotic writer. I just mean a writer who is who is a grown up. I love this. This is from Mara's memoir. I fully believe that most so-called bitches are former good girls. A good girl had to struggle to keep being good under impossible circumstances and often a lot of contradictions. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Relatable much?
Yeah. No, I was totally like the good girl growing up.
Yeah.
And that made me so resentful and so judgmental. And that made me miserable.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like I would get resentful and angry, and people wouldn't understand it was because I was trying to be good, but I couldn't.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'd hold myself to these impossible standards.
It's hard to be a bitch. I find I'm trying to be more bitchy. Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's really, you're not really taught to be assertive, I think.
Right, exactly.
And you're not. And I think it's also a cultural thing too. Like, you know, like my dad comes from like this Irish Catholic background where you never, you know, Irish American, Irish Catholic, like you don't ask for anything. You don't put yourself out there. You don't draw attention to yourself ever.
Yes, of course.
And like my mom was somebody who kind of drew attention everywhere she went. That was just her personality. But she, I think, she saw like a lot of narcissism in her family. And so she would be like, you know, if we were kids and we'd be like, yes, I'm the best, she'd be like, no, you're not. Don't say that. And also she was from Minnesota, and Minnesota's whole thing is like, we're not, we're not going to draw too much attention to ourselves. We don't want to, oh no, we're not great. Don't worry about it. So I feel like that made me like, okay. And I feel like I was like, it's funny because I was a very sincere child and I was a very literal child, and I always took things to extremes. And so I would always be like, oh, okay, so being confident is being conceited. So I can't be confident. I have to downplay my strengths. I have to, be modest. And to me, modest means saying I'm the worst, not like, drawing unnecessary attention to yourself.
Oh my goodness, sing it, sister.
Yeah, that was how I felt, like that I had to do that. But it's ironic because like, I remember after that I would try not to draw attention to myself, and I remember mentioning in conversation like, oh yeah, I was at Danny DeVito's Christmas party once, or his New Year's Eve party, and later on somebody was like, oh, I thought that you were like bragging by like really casually dropping it in, and I was like, oh, so I was trying to be casual about it and that didn't work either.
Yeah, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Yeah, that's something that I've really been working on, is like, yeah, I think for a while I really hated whenever people would be like, oh, you're bragging, oh, you're this or that. And I'd be like, well, I really don't want anyone to say anything negative about me.
Yeah.
And so you just get small.
But you also have to keep in mind, like, who's saying it and does it matter?
Yeah, totally.
That's ultimately the thing. It's like, if you care about everybody's opinions too much, it's gonna exhaust you.
Yeah. So it's easier to be a bitch eventually.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like I need to like, keep that part of myself, the like angry and resentful part of myself, for like things that really matter. Like if I see somebody being treated unjustly or something like that, then, then I'm going to use that. It's like carrying a sword with you.
So you've talked about having like a Jewish mom and a Catholic dad, and growing up in a very conservative Jewish environment, and then going to New York and meeting atheist Jews, progressive Jews, and learning that there's all kinds of ways to be.
Yeah.
And where are you at now?
I mean, I was very cynical about religion for a really long time. I had seen from a young age people use religion in a really dangerous and manipulative way. I'd seen when people who felt like they didn't have a lot of power, they would turn to religion, and they would use that religion to be very cruel. And so I sort of associated, that kind of religiosity with judgment, with cruelty, with, narcissism, with manipulation. And, also like I was growing up, I was like just becoming, like when the whole like Spotlight Catholic Church thing happened, like I was just at the right age to be like reading the newspaper. It's like when I just started taking interest in reading newspapers and things like that. And I was just like, oh my God, like organized religion is evil. And then like I went to an arts high school where like everybody like went through like a pagan phase, and everybody went through like a Buddhist phase. Yeah. It was so California. Yes. Like everybody had like Tibetan prayer flags in their room. And I think it's also just because this was like an arts boarding school in the 2000s, and the 2000s were, they were kind of like now, and they were kind of like the 80s, where it was like a really materialistic time.
Sure, yeah.
And there was a lot of war going on, and there was a lot of, things that were really kind of depressing and cynical going on. So maybe it's like an every 20 years thing. And then, so it was cool to like read Adbusters, and it was cool to talk about like studying Vedanta, and it was cool to talk about, to meditate. And it was, that was the thing, because that was different than the popular culture at the time. But then I got to college and like I started reading books about, you know, atheism and science and stuff, and I fell really hard into that. And it's funny though, because that was like around the time that like all the new atheist stuff was happening. And at first I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is like where I belong. But the more that I hung out with a lot of those people, and it's not true of all of them,
Yeah.
but I would like hear them say things that were like casually Islamophobic
Yes.
or transphobic. And I was like, I don't know if I agree with you guys on this. And
Right,
this is
yeah.
really upsetting me. I mean, or rather, I know I don't agree with you on this. And then like, as I got older, I do still think like I'm not a person whom faith comes to very easily. I think that I'm somebody who likes to see evidence for things, you know? But I think that there's kind of like one of my favorite science writers ever was Carl Sagan, because he found like the beauty in a lot of like, in, you know, concepts in science. And he said, you have to have a marriage of skepticism and wonder. And he said he was a classic agnostic and said there could be a God, but it's probably bigger than anybody ever thinks. And he would incorporate like local folklore and, you know, things into his science and would talk about allegories and things like that, and like talked with the Dalai Lama, and, you know, and he grew up Jewish. And so I kind of got into like cultural Judaism as I got older, and I realized, you know, I'd learn about things like the Workmen's Circle, which was like a Jewish, like a Jewish labor union sort of that did a lot of things, and they believed a lot in like they were called like the Bund, and they were very much like progressive Judaism that believed in, you know, supporting everybody, and believed in a concept of I think the word is doiket, which is here-ness, which meant our home is not, you know, in Israel, our home is wherever we are. And I started learning more about them, and I started learning more about other groups, and I realized like, oh, there's so much here. And I remember my mom saying to me when I was a kid, like, it doesn't matter, like, if you convert as you get older, or like if you marry somebody or whatever and decide to like raise the children a different religion or whatever. She's like, you're always going to be Jewish.
Yeah.
It's kind of something you can't escape from, and it is a cultural thing. So it is a cultural thing, and it's kind of an ethnicity too. I mean, because we're such a diasporic religion, you know. And diasporic, I'm not sure what the word is, but
Sounds good to me.
yeah, something like that. So I learned about that, and I still like was negative about a lot of organized religion, but like, again, I realized, I was like, okay, a lot of these people who are new atheists, I feel like they don't really stand for anything. They're just kind of against things.
Yes.
And there's some of them that I still know and I still, you know, agree with and you know, and love what they stand for very much. But I think that a lot of people, I would be like, oh, I feel much more comfortable with this person who's like a pastor than I do with this person who believes exactly the same things I do. But like, I think beliefs and values are different things.
Yeah. I think whatever you believe, like whether it's a specific religion or atheism, like you should still have the things that are good about religion.
Yeah.
Like if you're an atheist, how cool would it be for you to have an atheist community where you're helping each other and organizing together and fundraising together?
And I mean, there are some, but a lot of
I'm
them
sure
have
there
kind of
are.
split into different.
Yeah, I bet.
And people also don't realize that there are like atheist religions.
Interesting.
Yeah, like there
Okay.
are religions. There are some sects of Buddhism are atheist or agnostic. And like Jainism doesn't, you know, recognize any. And like also in Judaism, like there are rabbis that are atheists in Judaism.
Right.
Yeah. But for me, Judaism is a lot about culture and shared history. And it's like, when I light this candle, I'm lighting a candle that people have lit for thousands of years. And it makes me think a lot about like crypto Jews, which when every time I say that, people are like, is that like a Jewish, you know, Bitcoin thing? But like when I went to Colombia last year, and then I went again this summer, and they were like, and I mentioned like at a restaurant, I was like, oh, I don't eat pork. And I don't like super keep kosher, but I just never really ate pork or shellfish. And they were like, yeah, we have Jews here. And I was like, oh, do you? And they were like, well, yeah, we do. And I looked it up, and there's like a really old Jewish community there. And there were a lot of Jews that were kicked out of Spain in 1492. And they came down to the Caribbean and to South America. And some of them were crypto Jews. So they were Jews in secret for hundreds of years.
Whoa.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
book called, oh gosh, what is it called? Is it Ghetto Brothers? There's one about a guy's memoir where he talks about finding out that his family were crypto Jews. And all he knew was that they celebrated on Saturdays instead of Sundays. You know, he didn't go to church with his friends. He, you know, would have to stay in on Saturday instead. And his parents were like, don't tell anybody what we're doing.
Interesting.
And the idea that you can like hide that, you know, there are people that hid that for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Is amazing to me. And, you know, and that those communities still exist. And now there's like a lot of people, I think, in like Colombia that are like rediscovering their Jewish history and like going to synagogues and stuff. One thing I've always liked about Judaism is it's not about faith so much.
Yeah.
You know, it's about other things. And I do think like times in my life where I've tried to go without ritual and tried to go without community, it just hasn't worked for me.
Right.
So, you know, I found a synagogue lately that I go to, and funnily enough, like I went there and I was like checking in at like a Rosh Hashanah, you know, party or whatever. And I go there and I see this woman. She's like, okay, what's your name? And I looked at her and it was a girl I knew from high school. And she's head of the synagogue now.
Cool.
So I was just like, and I always was like intimidated by her because she seemed like really cool and assertive. And it was funny because this past Yom Kippur, I was like, yeah, you were kind of like angry and intimidating in high school. And she's like, well, so were you. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
We both were like very, very serious girls. And
yeah, that's kind of teen mode.
yeah, it is. You know, you're scared. So you like pretend to be harder than you are.
Yeah. I grew up Catholic, culturally Catholic, I would say, because my parents didn't really want to go to church.
Yeah.
But we did the sacraments because our grandparents believed in that stuff, and we're super Irish, so we were, you know, taught that the British were trying to colonize us and turn us Protestant, and these people held on to their faith forever. So even if you don't believe in it, you really ought to hang on to some of it. And, you know, growing up in northern New Jersey and the New York City area where there's so many Jews, I feel like they had such a similar story. Like so many of my friends, it was like same thing. Like, we're not really religious, but like, yeah, we're doing the holidays and everything because we're supposed to. It's good for our ancestors, and it would be a total shame if we just became like regular American people who don't believe in anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think in LA there's a lot of people who are like that. And we were like an observant family though. And like people, when I say I grew up in LA, they're like, oh, you must have grown up going to like a lot of fun bar mitzvahs and stuff. And I'm like, well, no, not really. Because I think people have this image of like the more secular and like wealthy Jews in LA and like not the like, you know, lower middle class or working class Jews, which do exist. And you know, it's such a stereotype. It's such a stereotype.
Yes.
And so somebody said to me recently, I was like, well, no, we would like go to Temple in the Valley and stuff. And they said, oh, your Haim sister's Jewish.
That's so funny.
And I was like, yes, exactly. That's what we were. Like my mom's family got more religious. And so she felt kind of pressure to like be more religious. And like, you're not supposed to drive on Saturdays, but our temple was, you know, several miles away. So what we would do is we would drive like half to like 3/4 of the way there. And then we would get out and walk the rest.
Okay.
And just pretend that we had walked the whole way.
Same vibe.
It was just, yeah. And I'm like, oh, so we were observant Jews. We were just really bad ones.
Yes. And, you know, isn't that the great thing?
Yeah.
That there's all different kinds to be.
Yeah. And it's really, but it's funny because like Catholics and Jews intermarry all the time.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, they live around each other.
Well, they do. Yeah. I mean, if you look at like, you know, if you look at like Chicago, LA, New York, Miami, you know, it's all like Irish Catholic or Italian Catholic or Latino Catholic and Jews.
Yes.
And so like, you know, there's so many like, you know, people who are Italian Jews or like Puerto Rican and Jewish and there's a lot of us like me who are, you know, Irish American and Jewish. And I feel like what's strange, you know, it's the strange thing is when you meet somebody who's half Jewish and half like Protestant. That almost never happens.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I think like
I think
maybe,
it's a different culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't see that very often. And I'm like, is it the guilt? Is it the food? Is it the, the if you're Irish or Latino, like the idea of like having been colonized,
Sure, yeah.
Is it I don't know what it is, but yeah, I feel like you don't see that very often.
You tweeted, speaking of Protestants, friendly reminder that evangelical Christians only support Israel and Zionism because they think Jews will be their human shields come the rapture. Should I cut that? Should I?
I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but this is something that really annoys me.
Yeah.
I think that I see a lot of people calling out, Jewish Zionists a lot. And like, look, I do think that, what's going on there is horrible and we should be talking about it. And I think that, the Jewish concept of an afterlife is too good for Netanyahu, and it's incredibly upsetting. And I have been speaking out against it, and trying to work with groups that support peace and are not, about that. But I do think that that's something that really frustrates me, because there are so many Christian evangelicals that support the idea of Israel, and they don't care about the Jews.
Yeah.
And they
probably don't even know any Jewish people.
They probably don't. And they probably don't also know that there are a lot of Christians in Palestine.
Yes.
So for them, it's not about peace. It is literally this misinterpretation of, basically a Bible conspiracy theory from the 70s that says that we need to do this for the rapture to come. It's all like this biblical literalism. And it's like one person's interpretation of biblical literalism that basically says that we need the Jews to have Jerusalem. So, and they see us as kindling. That's what it is. That's the only reason. And, that's the only reason that they support Israel. They support Israel because of it. And I feel like you see that more and more, because every now and then the mask slips and they will say something anti-Semitic, or they'll say something anti-Semitic about, American Jews, or they'll say something like
self-hating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, oh, well, your home is in Israel. And I'm like, I've never been to Israel,
right, yeah.
And this is the thing that like really frustrates me. And I don't see people calling it out.
Yeah.
It makes me so angry. And, I do think that Jews should be like, do not murder people in my name. Do not, kill children in my name.
Yeah.
They need to hold these people accountable, because a lot of these people are the people that are in power.
Yeah.
And the people that are in office. And nobody is talking about that, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene in The Sopranos where, oh gosh, what's his name? Is it Hesh or one of these guys? Hesh,
yeah.
yes. There's a scene in The Sopranos where Hesh is like, an evangelical guy comes to try to convert Tony, because he thinks he's dying. And Hesh's daughter is like, well, say what you will about evangelicals, but they're great friends to Israel. And Hesh just turns to her and goes, you wait. And it's true.
Yeah.
Like, these are people that, and I know, of course, not all evangelicals are like this, and perhaps some are just misguided, but a lot of people who have power and are doing these things and are, they don't actually, support Jews.
Yeah.
They only, they support Israel, and it's only because they need it to be the ground for like their fantasies.
Yeah.
And so for them, Jews and Palestinians of whatever religion, are just kindling. And it upsets me so much.
Yeah.
And it upsets me that they have so much power.
I know. Like, one of my goals in making this show is just to get more people talking about this, because like some of the pitfalls I notice is a lot of people just don't talk about it. If they're not Jewish or Muslim, they feel like, oh, it's their business and I don't want to say the wrong thing. But I feel like we're Catholic, we grew around Jewish people, we should be defending Jewish people, and we are protecting them from anti-Semitism by speaking up about this.
Yeah, I mean, it is anti-Semitism. It's just anti-Semitism with like a thin glaze. It's, there's a joke of like, because they're called Philosemites. And they're not, that doesn't mean somebody who respects and, likes Jewish culture. Philo-Semites are people who are like, oh yeah, we love Jews. You guys are. It's a very condescending kind of racism.
Yeah.
It's like sort of a model minority kind of thing,
Yes.
like they used to say in the 90s. You know, like, oh, Asian people are so this, they're so that, they're
I
so
love
great.
because you guys are so funny.
And it's not even like, but it's not even that, because like if people like the culture, you know, that's cool. I have a lot of friends where I joke where I'm like, oh, you're kind of culturally Jewish too, because you know your partner is Jewish or something like that. You know, maybe you married into a Jewish family, but there's a lot of people who I feel like are really the philo-Semitism is being friends with Jews for a purpose. You know, for a very cynical purpose, and so. The joke is that, you know, what's the difference between a Philo-Semite and an anti-Semite?
Nothing.
The anti-Semite's being honest.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's because that's what it is. It's just, you know,
right.
It's just anti-Semitism with like a thin layer of like, you know, with a Bible
Cover.
thin, you know,
Yeah.
a Bible thin like gilding on the top, you know, Bible paid for thin gilding on the top. That's just what it is. It's just anti-Semitism wrapped in, you know, a page of the Book of Revelations.
Another thing like I worry about, and which is why I think it's like good to just have more like open, messy conversations, is like the boomers who are getting a lot of wrong information, and I totally feel for them that they're scared of anti-Semitism, and so they're sort of like, please just like don't even talk about it at all, because what if it leads to, but it's like if we don't talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is strange how like, you know, the boomers kind of fell for a lot of different things, you know. I think there's a lot of information that's out there, and like I mean, of course I've seen anti-Semitism on the left. I've definitely seen it, and
and so I want to like assuage these boomers that like we're not saying anti-Semitism doesn't exist. No one's saying that, but like can't we say that like yes, that exists?
And it's well, this is a thing too. I feel like people will always say like, you are angry about this, why aren't you angry about that? And I'm like, no, I'm angry about lots of things.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I am very angry about, you know, an innocent child dying in Gaza, and I'm also very angry about, you know, people being murdered in Israel, and I'm very angry about, you know, people having hate crimes against them in the U.S., you know, regardless of who they are. Like, I am angry about a lot of things, and you know, my I think I wrote this on Blue Sky once. Like, my capacity for anger is as wide and deep as the sea. Like, you know, that is who I am, and I think that, you know, for me, Judaism is a lot about, you know, and this is something that like, you know, like my rabbis are like at protests, you know, protesting against ICE. And like, it's funny because there's one rabbi there who's like, she's got like very much like mom energy. And I grew up with a lot of like mostly like very old, or, you know, like the youngest one would be like 60. And the oldest one, you don't even know how old they were. Like, those were the rabbis that I grew up with, and they were mostly men, you know? And so then I would see like, but then I would go, you know, now I go to a different kind, and, you know, a more progressive temple, and like the head rabbi is a woman, and, you know, she gives like kind of like mom or young grandmother vibes. And then there's also like two young hot rabbis.
Yes.
And the young hot rabbis are like, giving really impassioned speeches, saying like there have always been, you know, Jews in these areas, but there's also always been Palestinians, and there needs to be peace, and there needs to be this, and we need to, you know, and being really, really impassioned and really, you know, fierce about these things, and talking about justice, and talking about peace, and talking about truth to power, and talking about, you know, fighting ICE, and how, you know, we need to be doing relief for these people and this people, and like we were persecuted people, so we need to help other persecuted people. And they're like at rallies and stuff, and you'll just like, you know, you'll like walk by a protest and you'll be like, oh, there's the rabbi. And I don't think I ever thought I would find that, you know. I like that. I like, you
That's
know,
awesome.
You kind of can't get what people believe until you understand why they came to believe that, or how they came to believe that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I look at my dad's life, and my dad has different views than me, but I also know, like, you know, he grew up in a different socio-political ecosystem. He grew up in a time that was very rare, where it was, post World War II boomer, they thought that everybody was going to be able to have a house with a lawn, and that's what everybody would want, and it would keep everybody happy forever.
Yeah.
And that, well, of course, a Republican president will come in and lower taxes and everybody will be happy. And you look at like the ecosystem that people grew up in, and then you look at like the ecosystem that they get their attention from. And people are always, I think, going to look at like things through the lens of their own trauma and the lens of their own and cultural trauma and like religious and racial and ethnic trauma as well. Like I remember I was in Belfast a couple years ago, which I loved. And there are people, he said like, if you're Jewish, you're going to see like murals here that, depict Israel in like a very negative way on this side of town. On the other side of town, you will see it portrayed in a very positive way. And he said, I always tell Jewish people there, like, I'm sorry if this is like upsetting or offensive to you. And I was like, well, I mean, I think that it's the way people view things, the way people see it. So like, of course it's, your own cultural background, you're probably going to identify with this or with this. I think a lot of my favorite places that I've visited are places that have gone through really hard times because there's resilience in the people, and there's people who stayed there. The people who stayed there all really love it and they care for it. I think it's also just like a lot of these people are very welcoming because they're not used to people coming there because things were, considered dangerous or something. Because that's how I felt in Colombia too. It helps that in Colombia, like Matilda's like one of the biggest movies ever. Like it's shown on TV all the time. I am so much more famous in Colombia than I am in the US.
That's huge.
And and some people say it's because it's kind of, like they invented magical realism.
Sure, yes.
And they're like, Matilda's kind of magical realist, but so I went there and I was just like, oh, and I'm not used to like
They're
liking
feeding you grapes.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what it was like. And it wasn't even grapes. It was tropical fruit because it's Colombia and it's the freshest tropical fruit, and somebody will pick a coconut off a tree for me. And and that's what it was like. But it was, and I thought that would be overwhelming for me, but it was nice.
That's
because
so cool.
because they were very sincere.
Yeah.
And I remember they kept saying to me like, they would be like, sincere, like sincere, or like, it means like, or not sincere, like there was a word they used that meant simple, but it just means like humble and sincere. Because I was like, simple usually means like you don't get things.
Okay.
In American, I think like simple means like, like you don't understand things.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, is that what they think of me? And they're like, no, they mean like humble, and sincere.
Pure of heart.
Yeah, pure of heart. Exactly.
Yeah. So you've done so many things. You've been my hero child star.
Thank you.
And you're a hero writer, and you're an advocate for endometriosis.
Yeah, hence the sweatshirt.
OCD.
Keep my friends close and my enemies closer. The uterus.
And you've raised awareness for OCD.
Yeah.
And, people getting the right medication, which is so awesome. What's up now for Mara?
I mean, I think that honestly, like I've been doing a lot of audiobook work, which I love. And I've been doing a lot of like activism work. Like I mean, I feel like I've kind of taken a step back from social media, partly because it's so like decentralized these days anyway, but also because like, it's funny, like I feel like when we were like, in our early 20s and such, it was like you wanted to have a podcast so people would come to your show. And now I feel like it's kind of the opposite. Like you do a show so people will subscribe to your Patreon or something like that. And I don't, and I think like both are like legit, but I think that for me, it was always like, I want to get people to come to my shows in the real world and do these things. And so I've done things like I spoke at my old middle school about endometriosis and told them that it affects 1 in 9 people with a uterus. It's incredibly common. There is no cure. Nobody knows for sure what causes it. And there aren't very many treatments other than, birth control and surgery, and you can't diagnose it without surgery. And we've talked about that in, the face of justice and such. And my middle school was actually recently named after Dolores Huerta, who was and I talked, I said to them like, look, Dolores Huerta is somebody who spoke out against injustices, and you guys should too. And I made sure that I wasn't just talking to the girls; I was talking to all of the kids there. Although later I was also invited to talk to the feminist club at school. They have a feminist club, which I thought was adorable. So I've been doing things like that, but I think like, and I've been in the audiobook world, and I love it because I love reading and I love talking. So that's like my favorite thing. And it's acting without, having to deal with all the problems of Hollywood and all the sort of overwhelming attention of Hollywood.
Sure, yeah. It's
Not
nice to be a little invisible.
That's a thing too, is like, as I'm getting older, I'm like, how many roles are there for women in their late 30s, and even then, like, yeah, I don't think that even if I wanted to go back to acting, I don't know if there really would be for me. And it's not that I don't miss film sets and such, but I don't know if Hollywood would really know what to do with me. So I love audiobooks because, like, you can play a contract killer in 1 month, and then you can play a nun in the next month, a nun who solves mysteries, which is a part that I've played. And then you can play like a beloved character from, children's literature and films. You can do that, and it's awesome. You can kind of be anything. And I also think that for me, I've kind of wanted to go back to theater. Like any kind of theater. So like my friends and I have a show coming up this weekend. So probably by the time this goes out, it'll have passed. But we're doing a show at the Elysian called Grief Party. And we've done it once in New York. We're doing it here in LA. Maybe we'll do it again. And it's all about stories and comedy and music about grief. And we're going to be making like foods that people in our family used to make, people who have passed away and things like that. And I've been writing plays again. And I just feel like theater kind of was my home at uncertain times in my life. And yeah, you don't make a lot of money from it, but it does kind of support you and feed you and give you, love. So I feel like that's really what I kind of want to be doing right now, is getting back into theater. And yes, there is theater in LA, and and we're trying to make more of it happen. I'm fine with being like in my late 30s and not being like super out there and super famous. I'm fine with, working on these things that are fulfilling to me. And I think that's what's fulfilling for me right now.
I love to hear it. You're a fantastic person. You're so talented. You do so much good stuff with your platform.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking with us. Ladies and germs, Mara Wilson. Clap, 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 clap.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been so great.
Oh.
I love the set. I love everything.
Thank you. Well, they did a great job.
Yeah.
Turn it on!
That's it. That's my convo with Mara Wilson. She wants to do theater, so write a play, cast her in it. She's gonna rock it. That's it. Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Later, sucker!